Hello, this is Dr. Nuke again. One of my interests is older technologies. For example, I have a stereo in my apartment, which is like an old-fashioned stereo from the 80s. There's separate components, an amplifier, a CD player, a dual cassette deck, tape deck, and a turntable that plays both 45 RPM records and 33 RPM records, but not 78s, and two speakers. Oh, and the amplifier has a tuner on it to listen to the AM or FM radio. Very simple, old-fashioned setup. So that's what I like for listening to music. I do listen to music with my phone using earbuds sometimes, but that is convenient too. But I really like the old setup. And if I had the money, who knows? Maybe I'd even buy tube equipment. You can buy tube equipment that's high-end audiophile equipment. Although right now I've heard there's a problem getting tubes because the tubes mainly came from Russia and China. Although I heard that there was someone that purchased a bunch of tube manufacturing equipment from the former Yugoslavia and brought it over to the United States, so maybe there'll be some tube production here. So I like vacuum tubes. Vacuum tubes, the little glass things with electronic stuff inside them that plugged into a socket. The circuit board would have these holes where you plug in the tubes, and then if the tube burned out, you pulled out the old tube and plugged in a fresh new one. Simple as that. You didn't have to do any soldering or anything to replace a tube. Also, other interesting old technologies. Movie film is an interesting old technology, not used very much anymore. But I would like to, at some point, get back into doing Super 8 film photography, which I did in the past a little bit. Problem is, a roll of Super 8 film now costs, I think, $75 last I heard, and that's including processing for 3.5 minutes of film. Color, but silent. Other interesting old technologies, I like vinyl records. Even though that is an old technology, it's not dead. A lot of people prefer vinyl for their music, and they still make vinyl. In fact, I was at Walmart once, and I saw they have a larger selection of vinyl than they do CDs even, since CDs have gone out of favor with a lot of people opting to do downloads instead of buying physical copies on CD. Other old technology, this is technology a little too primitive even for me. The old 78 shellac records that were played on a gramophone. Those are not as good a quality sound because the dynamic range isn't as good. There's more noise, the signal ratio, and the equipment they used to play them was very primitive and not very high fidelity. Originally, those old 78 shellac records, as well as the cylinder records, which came out before the discs did, they were played on a phonograph with nothing electrical in it. It was all mechanical, and they had a needle that vibrated a diaphragm, and the vibrations went through a tube that went into a horn, and you heard the sound from the record come out of the horn. But it was a tinny sound. It wasn't a very full sound. It wasn't a very full, sweet sound like what you would get from a vinyl record and a good stereo with good speakers. But that's what people had in the old days. The phonograph was invented, well, the phonograph was first made available to the public by Thomas Edison in 1890. And at that time, you could not buy a phonograph. You had to lease it from the Edison Company. And the first phonographs had an electric motor in them. They didn't have to crank them up. The electric motor was battery powered, and the phonograph would be serviced from time to time. Part of the servicing would be replacing the battery or charging the battery for the motor. They did make after that, they made phonographs that didn't have anything electrical. You would just crank up a spring mechanism, and then it would unwind and turn the turntable or the spindle. Yes, there's so many old technologies. Well, let's talk about even older technologies, Stone Age technologies, such as making flint arrowheads and stone axes and other such things. There's no real need for that technology now, except that I believe that technologies even as old as that, need to be preserved for historical reasons. And who knows, maybe someday, if we're blasted back to the Stone Age, we'll need those technologies. Right now, though, how many people know how to make an arrowhead from a piece of flint? Probably not very many. But nevertheless, that knowledge and the knowledge of other old technologies should be preserved. Well, that concludes this talk.